My name is Jasmine. I'm an illustrator working on a medieval comic. Welcome to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be documenting how I'm thumbnailing chapter 4 of my medieval comic. My previous vlog series, I covered how I finished chapter 3. So now I'm moving forward and working on chapter 4. The first step to any comic chapter is having to make thumbnails. Now every comic artist does their thumbnails differently. It depends on how they create ideas, how they're organized, if they prefer storyboarding digitally or by hand, if they have to work with an editor. All those different factors contribute to how they prefer to create these thumbnails. Thumbnails are just essentially your first step in planning out a comic. You don't just sit down and draw a page from a script. No, you have to plan it out first. The panels need to fit the dialogue, and if you also have a specific page count, then you need to be careful with how you organize those panels to make them fit in, 8 pages or 30 pages, whatever your specific page count is. So this step in thumbnailing is extremely important in the whole process of making a comic. If you plan out a comic poorly with bad paneling, bad angles, static storytelling, and by that I mean like no dynamic angles, no backgrounds, there's nothing you will be able to do to fix that later on. So this step is super crucial. No matter how well you draw it, no matter how well the story is written, if your thumbnails set up boring or confusing panels, nothing will be able to fix that. So I do want to stress that thumbnailing is a very important step. Do not ignore it, which is why I wanted to show you my process and why I've taken over the dining table. So here's the dining table. It's usually clear of stuff, but while I'm thumbnailing, I always take it over with all this stuff. So I'll briefly go over why this is all here. Firstly, pile of reference books. They're mostly manga. Each one has a specific purpose. So Naruto is great for action panels, especially scenes with groups, reactions of everyone in the group during a battle. Very important. I've got One Piece, Witch Hat Atelier, Immortal Rain. Lots of varieties of different mangas that I personally am inspired by. I keep them around especially for paneling inspiration. One of them also being Nausicaa. This I have open all the time because I'm directly inspired by not only the style but by the way the paneling is done. It's very quick and compressed, which is what I need to keep remembering so that I can get through the story pretty quickly. This is my pencil case. I have all of the highlighters and things that I use in my thumbnail system. So this is the actual book that contains my thumbnails. I have all of the thumbnails of chapter 1, 2, 3, and now 4. This is the little trash sketch dump notebook that I have for making the first pass of any thumbnail. So while I'm thinking through the scene and the angle, I draw the panel that could contain that angle. Sometimes that's just enough for me to think of an angle that I like, literally just drawing the square, but other times I do have to draw the angle several times to really see if it makes sense. So I dump everything initially here, and then when I decide on it, it goes to the final thumbnail paper. And then we have the script. This is the script for chapter 4. Look at that. All of the scenes are listed in chapter 4 here, and every time I thumbnail a scene, I just knock the number off of it. So currently, I am working on the scene called Christmas Preparations, scene 7. I have my iPad for further research that I need to do per scene, my planner, and then I have my story notebook where I dump everything from the story, like planning out the kitchen, any items that I need to remember to include in every kitchen scene, and just thumbnails of any artwork that I would like to eventually draw. Anyways, this is like the dedicated notebook for the comic of miscellaneous notes. So I keep that there because sometimes I get ideas for illustrations. This is my domain currently. I've been sitting here for almost all month working through these thumbnails. Now I'm doing something slightly different this time around in chapter 4, and let me show you. This is the dashboard for chapter 4. I do have dashboards for the other chapters. Here is chapter 2's dashboard. So what I do is I list out all the pages, and then slowly as I go through them in drawing, editing, and adding the text, I'll start knocking them off as a tracker. And that gives me a good bird's eye view of my progress. So every chapter I've been doing a dashboard, and they all look slightly different because I improve my system little by little. So this was chapter 3. I didn't finish it because I ended up transferring it to another notebook, but just so you know, this is how I stay organized with how I conceive of these chapters in my head. This is probably the most complicated dashboard I've made so far. I listed the same scenes as they are here, and then I've been color coding them as I thumbnail them. The reason I'm color coding them is so that I can see in that chapter kind of like an X-ray of how many pages per scene are happening here. So the first scene is actually the longest in the chapter, and that's why it took up 10 pages. And see, it's all in dark green. I'm on Christmas preparations, scene 7, so I've thumbnailed 1.5 of that scene so far. Now I don't know how long this chapter is gonna go, so I only have these squares penciled in. Once I thumbnail a page, then I mark it with that colored marker. So far I have thumbnailed 30 pages, and I'm over halfway done with the chapter, so I'm guessing this chapter is going to take like 45 pages, maybe. I have no idea. I'm a little scared because I really would like to keep these chapters at 30 pages, but it's hard to squeeze everything neatly into one chapter. It is what it is. But I'm definitely foreseeing that this is gonna be like 45 pages, maybe. And so yeah, this whole month of March and half of February, I've been thumbnailing and thumbnailing and thumbnailing. So that's been my life lately, is these thumbnails. I didn't start recording this process from the beginning because I actually was struggling to get into the thumbnailing mind. There's different tasks when you're making comics. You have to thumbnail, draw the under sketches, then draw the actual line art. These different stages, like, it definitely feels like you have to start the engine in that skill and then warm up to it. So I definitely felt that with the thumbnailing because I haven't thumbnailed like consistently in almost a year. So it took me a few weeks to get back into the brain of paneling out a scene, like visualizing it, thinking critically about if that angle makes sense with what I'm trying to say. That type of thinking, it doesn't happen naturally, so it took a while to get used to it again. And also, like, life stuff happened and I've been extremely depressed. I am feeling like I'm trying to feel normal again, so this is my attempt at turning on the camera, getting back into the groove of things. Yeah. It's 9 in the morning. I woke up with a headache. I'm just trying to power through it. I forgot to mention this little guy. I have him here with me while I'm thumbnailing because I do use him for references. So if I'm thinking of a scene, there's 2 people and one person's looking at him in the distance, I put him like this and it immediately unlocks an angle in my head. So without it, my mind is a little blank, especially when it comes to perspective. I have actually nothing going on in there. But the moment I see this little guy angled in a way of part of the scene, like in a conversation, or maybe he's on horseback, immediately I can see the scene better with the perspective grounded. And so that's why he's here with me, and whenever I work in a cafe, I'm sure people laugh when they see me going like this and that, and it's just when they have no idea what the hell I'm doing. To tell you a little bit about the story, Chapter 4 is going to finalize Alice's training. We're going to be introduced to 2 more characters that are part of the Knights group. We're going to finalize Alice's armor because she's eventually going to have to wear armor for the tournament. So the Knights need to figure that out. And lastly, which is my favorite part, we're going to throw in a few cute scenes between Alice and Henry that I've already partially thumbnailed. Finally getting to some of these interactions between these two has been really nice. Now you might have noticed the word Christmas in my scene list, and that is because the last scene is going to take place in Christmas festivities. That is actually where I'm starting. This is the beginning of the Christmas season. I really wanted to start it in a new page, but I didn't have anything else to add to the last scene, and I don't want to add fodder panels, so the transition between the two scenes is just gonna have to happen in the middle of the page. The first panels for this Christmas preparation scene is gonna be a establishing shot of the castle and a few shots of the castle being decorated and how there's a lot of activity going on. They're gonna talk about the activity, and then that'll be the end of this scene, and I'll just keep moving. What's really great to know is that the longest scene in this chapter is the first scene. So all of these other scenes are probably going to be 2 to 3 pages long. That is the one thing that I'm happy about in this whole process, is that the hardest scene has been done. And I'll have plenty of things to knock off, which is my favorite thing in productivity, knocking out task lists. Anywho, it's 9:14, the start of a day, and my plan is to make a big dent, cover most of those scenes that are left, and go through these Christmas festivities. And before I proceed, I feel like I need to say that this isn't like a filler Christmas episode in the comic. The story is still developing, it just happens to be set during a Christmas feast. So I don't want anyone to think that this is just me wanting to do a special Christmas episode where people do Christmassy things for nostalgia. No. Actually, this scene could take place in any other type of feast. Important things are gonna happen. It just happens to be set in wintertime. I've been liking color coding the characters too, just in case I forget what any of these thumbnails mean. Coloring is an added way of informing future Jasmine what the hell is going on in this scene. For Jeanne, the castle maid, I've been coloring her in purple. Agnes, the castle cook, she's been in this like bluish purpley highlighter. And Christos, the castle keeper, coloring him in brown. Anyone in pink is Alice. In red I have Henry. Here are more scenes in the kitchen to show who's talking. And I think that helps a lot in distinguishing my scribbles. In the script, I also mark which comic page sits in the script. So whenever I need to flick back to the script, I can quickly figure out where the dialogue sits per comic page. So we got 31, and we're starting 31. And that marks the end of that Christmas preparation scene. Christmas, Catherine and Alice. I like to number the dialogues so that I know where they are supposed to be placed in the paneling. Otherwise, I'll lose track of what each person said where. I've dedicated that scene to be pink, so that means the first page of that scene I turned it into pink. Even though the last scene spills into it, I think technically this page would be more so that new scene. It is 12:30 now. I was making breakfast and my headache got so bad that I quickly ate it and went straight to bed to try to sleep it off. Like, the headache was giving me major nausea too. So it was bad. So I'm finally back up out of bed from that. I've reheated leftover coffee and we'll continue this. I'm slowing down. I'm still playing around with the bottom half of this page. This part is talking about the Christmas preparations, and here we start with the actual Christmas feast. And so it begins with shots of the village and then the castle and then all the decorations inside the castle as the feast has commenced. So I need to figure out what angles I'm going to choose to introduce the castle during Christmas. So like this angle or like that, because there'll be decorations over here. So do I want to spotlight this instead, like that? And if I choose an angle like that, where would it go in here? I'm thinking of getting rid of this panel because here we have the castle outside and people coming in. And then I was thinking we follow the people going through the gate of the main castle, but I don't think that's really saying much or adding to the story as well as the vibes of Christmas. So I think I'm going to get rid of that and make it instead another establishing shot of the inside of the castle. So it would actually be people coming into this castle, and then the next shot would be something like this, and then that. So I'm trying to think of what's important here. What am I trying to say in every panel when it comes to showing the feast? I want to show that there's decorations. I want to show that there is merriment, that the villagers are partying inside the castle grounds. Those are the two main things I want to show. So the question is, how am I going to show it in a way that's both pretty and interesting? To answer that, I need to figure out what I actually want to show. So I'm using this Bruegel art book because he has painted a lot of scenes of peasants partying. It's actually a little bit overwhelming, just the amount of details that he has included in these scenes. But this is kind of the vibe I'm trying to go for, where there's a lot going on, everyone's doing their own thing, and it's fun. So I'm trying to use a lot of these paintings as inspiration and to see if I can steal from how he's doing these shots. Like, they're obviously kind of aerial or like bird's eye view, and the eye doesn't really focus on anything in particular. Here's another scene where the peasants are partying. You can see one guy is pouring his beer, one guy's about to play the bagpipe or whatever instrument that is. Bread is being passed around. A lot of really cool details, giving the overall picture of realism. So that's what I've been perusing right now in trying to answer the question of how am I going to portray this feast so that in the next page we can get on with the story of Alice talking to Catherine. This space is for establishing shots only. And we'll see what I come up with. And I'm done. This is going to be very difficult to draw when I get to this page. Definitely not looking forward to that. So I actually removed that castle establishing shot here because I feel like it would have been redundant 2 pages later. To show Christmas decorations, we should just show more people putting decorations up, so I don't need a shot of the castle there. Where I need it is here. I don't know if you can make sense of these scribbles. This is what I thought of. That took me over an hour. Yikes! And I'm probably going to change it. Part of me right now is just trying to get through the thumbnailing, but I know that I should reread these thumbnails in a way where you're immersed into the story so that you can really visualize it going through each panel, kind of like in a movie, and make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. Hi, kitty. Wants to join us. It's 3 o'clock. Time has flown, you guys. That page took forever, but it is an important page. I got new prescription glasses. I think they're a little too big, but whatever. It's Saturday, almost noon, time to continue. I actually got a lot of work done at the cafe yesterday. Completed 2 whole scenes. I thumbnailed like 8 pages, which I think is my record of thumbnails. Kind of slow progress, so 8 pages is a lot. I'm almost done. I only have 1 scene left. So this is the script, right? This is all that's left to thumbnail. From here to the back. So that's gonna be either 2 or 3 more comic pages to panel out. I do foresee finally finishing today. It might take me all day because this is the end of chapter 4, and just like beginning chapter 4, it's kind of stressful to make a decision on how I want to conclude this chapter and like wrap things up in a satisfying way and still want a reader to pick up the next chapter. That's mostly the pressure that I feel with the last couple of pages. I feel like it is going to take me a little bit of a while to decide on those last pages. Before proceeding though, I need to replace my black ink because my pen has run out of the black. And I love these pens. This is the Uniball Jetstream. It's the same kind of pen that is included in any Hobonichi order. I mean, if you're ordering directly from their store. This is my Uniball pen that came with my Hobonichi order. I loved it so much that I actually bought one in Japan that was just like it. There it is. Cool. Back to work. Tea tree and eucalyptus with lavender.
It's just called Torrance.
I've had a long journey grappling with thumbnailing as a skill or a task. Specifically with this comic project, I used to dread thumbnailing. Thumbnailing chapter 1 for this comic was the worst. Partially because I felt the pressure of getting it right and not knowing how to get it right. It was such a foreign task that I didn't want to do it, even though I've storyboarded comics before, including lengthy ones like my sci-fi webcomic Space Warriors. So it's not like I've never planned out comic panels. It's just this project specifically trying to tell a story with a lot of characters, doing it in an entertaining way, and also fitting as much story as I can in each page. There's an element of efficiency here that I am trying to also achieve. So maybe through the juggling process, it just makes me feel very insecure about doing it right. But I've been working on this project for several years now, so I've had quite a journey with thumbnailing. So far right now, I'm in a good enough space to get it done without it being too painful. Part of that clicking was enjoying the fact that it's just a thumbnail. I can change things whenever I want. I get to just have fun being immersed in the story and looking at it as a movie. I'm just a bystander watching everything and writing it down.
My wrapping paper. Guess I should just wrap her up. She'll be a good gift to someone, not for ourselves.
Kitty, what are you doing in there? He's not gonna like that. Wow. Seriously?
Gift to you.
Oh.
Looks like she just came out of an egg. Go.
Wow. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now you're getting fancy.
And don't make a mess.
It's yummy, thank you. It's exactly 5 o'clock. I had met up with a friend for coffee. So that was a good break before diving into the very, very last page of the script. Now that the break is over, it's time to think of a creative way of ending chapter 4. I've been noticing that the comic page on my thumbnail book is actually wider than the actual comic page. The ratio isn't quite equivalent. So the issue here is that some pages I'm allocating 3 panels that are not gonna fit nicely on here. And I just did a flip through, and there are about 2 pages that I think are gonna be an issue drawing. Like fitting these 3 panels in here is gonna be tricky. I don't know if you can tell the difference, but each of these panels contains dialogue and edges. So it's not just a zoom in of one person, there's at least 2 people in each of these 3 panels. So they're gonna have to be like this size, and that's not going to fit. I'm gonna have to make one of these panels a lot thinner to be able to fit them on here. So I noticed that right now, and like I said, there's only 2 pages that I think I'm gonna have an issue with. It was the one I just showed you, oh, and this one. Here I squeeze in 4 different panels onto one row, and that is definitely not going to work if I want them to be legible. So that's not going to work. But I did decide instead to then, instead of making them vertical, make them horizontal. So they'll end up being squares. So one square here and another here of their reactions instead. But now that I've established that I need to be careful with the proportions, that they're not the same, I'm trying to block out the second to last page here. I basically have 2 tall panels squeezed by 2 wide panels. This is not going to fit in here. See, this worked because this one doesn't have a background. Both of these panels are gonna be full of information. So they're not gonna fit. So now I'm trying to figure out if it should actually just be this, 3 panels, and then move this longer one down here. If you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, that's fine. I'm just trying to play Tetris here with the storytelling. I had to open my comic page folder. If you're wondering what page this is in chapter 2. We're done. I definitely feel like I'm gonna have to be careful about how I put those panels down once in the drawing stage, noticing the different ratios. That'll be a future Jasmine problem. And just in the nick of time as I'm losing light here. If you have any questions on my process of how I create these thumbnails, definitely leave a comment down below. Let me know also how you thumbnail. Do you have a trash sketchbook to put your first pass of ideas? Even digitally, I feel like people have a first pass dump and then they decide on their thumbnails. It's very interesting. I'm gonna take a break tomorrow, and then starting Monday, I will start drawing chapter 4. If you'd like to see how those pages end up looking fully drawn out, you should consider checking out my Patreon. It's only $1 a month. I post all of my updates there. I hope this video gave you some ideas on how to thumbnail your own comic. I'm actually in such a groove with thumbnailing that I think I'm gonna start also doing chapter 5. And I just did the template for its dashboard and everything. So once I print out the script, I'm gonna get a head start on chapter 5 as well. That's it for today's vlog. Stick around on my channel if you'd like to see how I end up drawing these. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.